In the pouring London rain, where yellow streetlights turned the wet asphalt to gold, Oliver Reed, a man who had everything, was about to make a bet that would change his life. Inside a lavish restaurant surrounded by his wealthy friends, the air was thick with laughter and the clinking of glasses. Oliver, with his careless smile and expensive watch, was the center of it all. He thought he had life figured out: money, parties, and an endless stream of admirers. But his friend Ethan, with a mischievous grin, threw down a challenge. "Oliver, mate, you think you can buy love? I bet you can't charm someone real, someone ordinary. Marry a waitress for a whole month." The table erupted. It was ridiculous, impossible, and exactly the kind of dare Oliver would never back down from. "Challenge accepted," he smirked, a dangerous glint in his eye. And just like that, fate stepped in. Her name was Lily Thompson, a waitress working 2 jobs to support her family, with tiredness in her eyes, but a quiet strength that set her apart. As she served their table, a clumsy slip sent hot tea spilling all over Oliver's expensive jacket. "I'm so sorry, sir," she stammered, her face flushed with panic. His friends howled with laughter. "There's your bride, Oliver. Start the challenge now." But instead of anger, Oliver surprised everyone, including himself. "It's all right," he said softly, his voice calm as he gently held her wrist. She hurried away, but her simple, honest panic lingered in his mind long after she was gone. That night, a thought sparked in his mind. "A waitress, huh? Let's see what destiny has planned." The next morning, the bell of the cozy cafe where Lily worked chimed, and in walked Oliver Reed. Dressed down in a simple shirt, holding a single flower, he looked entirely out of place. "You again," Lily said, her arms crossed. "If you're here to mock me, please leave." He shook his head, a surprisingly genuine smile on his face. "No, I came to apologize, and to ask you something serious." The cafe fell silent. "I want you to marry me," he said, his voice clear and steady. Lily stared, her jaw dropping. "Are you insane?" He chuckled softly. "Maybe, but hear me out. Marry me for 1 month. You'll be paid well, and your family will be taken care of." Her eyes narrowed, anger flashing in them. "Is this some kind of joke to you? My life isn't a game for rich people like you to play." For the first time, Oliver's confident mask slipped. "You're right," he admitted, his voice softening. "Maybe I've been foolish, but I'm serious. I want to understand what it's like to live differently, to feel something real. Everyone around me wears masks. You don't." That night, Lily couldn't sleep. She stared at the business card he'd left, her mother's soft cough echoing from the next room. The rent was due. The bills were piling up. It was a crazy, desperate idea. But there was something in his eyes she couldn't forget. Not arrogance, but a deep, hidden loneliness. The next day, she found him waiting outside the cafe, standing in the rain without an umbrella. "You're going to catch a cold," she said, her voice softer than she intended. "So you care," he teased. She sighed. "Why are you still here?" His answer was simple and earnest. "I told you, I don't give up easily. I want to learn how to live for real." And in that moment, looking at him drenched but determined, she made a decision. "Fine," she said. 1 month. But there are rules. You don't treat me like a doll, you don't lie, and when it's over, you walk away." He grinned, relief washing over his face. "Deal." Their wedding was a quiet affair at a small registry office. No friends, no family, no fanfare. Lily wore a simple white dress, her hands trembling as she signed the papers. Oliver wore a plain suit. As they walked out, he tried to lighten the mood. "Well, Mrs. Reed, that wasn't so bad." She shot him a cold look. "Don't call me that. This isn't real." He chuckled nervously, but hearing his name next to hers sent an unexpected jolt through his heart. They arrived at his countryside mansion, a place so large and silent it felt more like a museum than a home. The housekeeper, Mrs. Parker, greeted them warmly. Oliver watched as Lily spoke to her with a kindness and respect he rarely saw in his world. That night, he brought her a cup of tea he'd made himself. She took a sip and winced. "Too much sugar." He laughed, not offended, but charmed. "Okay, lesson 1. I can't make tea." For the first time, she offered him a small, genuine smile. "Thank you for saying yes," he said softly. She looked back at him, a flicker of warning in her eyes. "Don't thank me yet. You might regret it." The following days were a comedy of errors. Oliver, the man who could run a business empire, couldn't make toast without burning it. He overwatered the plants and was completely baffled by a dripping tap. Lily would watch him, a quiet laugh escaping now and then. "Don't you have people for this?" she'd tease. "Maybe I wanted to learn," he'd reply, a new humility in his voice. With each clumsy attempt and shared laugh, the wall between them began to crumble. He was starting to see the person behind the tired waitress, and she was starting to see the man behind the money. His friends kept texting, their jokes about the bet, feeling more and more like a guilty secret. Because every time he saw Lily's face light up while watching children play in the park, the word bet felt like a stone in his chest. "They remind me of how life should be. Simple," she told him one evening, and he realized he was learning more from her than he ever thought possible. Something was shifting inside him. This wasn't a game anymore. One evening, by the fireplace, she finally asked him the question that had been hovering between them. "Why did you really do this?" He hesitated, the truth catching in his throat. "At first, it was a dare, a stupid bet with friends." He saw the flicker of hurt in her eyes and rushed to continue. "But it doesn't matter now, because I don't want it to end like one." The rain began to fall outside, just as it had the night they met. Oliver stepped out, feeling the cool drops on his face. He had made a bet to win a game, but now, looking back at the house where Lily was, he whispered to the night sky, "Maybe I've finally found something money can't buy." And inside, Lily watched him, a storm of confusion and a surprising flutter of hope in her heart. She didn't know it yet, but this one reckless bet was about to change both of their lives. The morning after their quiet wedding, Lily woke up in a large, beautiful room. Golden sunlight fell through the curtains, and for a moment she wondered if she was dreaming. Everything around her was elegant. Polished wood, soft sheets, a world entirely different from her own. But deep inside, she felt completely out of place. Downstairs, Oliver waited at the breakfast table, nervous but pretending to be calm. The silence in the grand dining room was unusual for him. Mrs. Parker, the kind-hearted housekeeper, smiled warmly as she served him tea. "She's a sweet girl, sir," she said gently. Oliver managed a faint smile in return. "I just hope she doesn't hate me." Mrs. Parker chuckled softly. "Then stop acting like a businessman. Act like a husband." When Lily entered the dining room, she looked hesitant. The table was covered with elaborate dishes she didn't recognize. Oliver noticed her unease. "What do you usually have for breakfast?" he asked, his voice softer than she expected. Lily shrugged lightly. "Just toast and tea." The next morning, when she came down, she found exactly that waiting for her. Simple toast and tea. A small, genuine smile touched her lips for the first time. "You didn't have to change everything for me." Oliver replied quietly, "Maybe I wanted to try something simple for once." For a few days, a fragile calm settled between them. Lily tried to adjust to her new surroundings, even helping Mrs. Parker in the kitchen just to feel a sense of normalcy. But outside their home, whispers and rumors began to spread. Everyone in Oliver's elite circle was talking about his sudden marriage to a waitress. Some called it a joke, others cruelly predicted it wouldn't last. At a party one evening, Oliver ran into his old friend, Ethan. Ethan laughed mockingly. "I can't believe you actually did it, mate. Married a waitress? That's rich." Oliver's friendly expression vanished. "Her name is Lily. Show some respect." Ethan just smirked. "Don't tell me you're actually falling for her." Oliver said nothing, but the look in his eyes gave away the truth he was just beginning to understand himself. Meanwhile, Lily was trying her best to fit in. She started to notice the small, quiet ways Oliver tried to help her. He had sent medicine to her sick mother without telling anyone. He even paid her younger brother Tom's school fees, never once mentioning it. When Lily finally found out, she confronted him, asking why he would do all that. He simply said, "Because I wanted to." For the first time, she looked at him differently, not as a spoiled rich man, but as someone who was genuinely trying to care. Days turned into weeks. Their bond grew slowly, nurtured by small smiles and quiet laughter. One evening, she was baking in the kitchen when Oliver walked in. "Need some help?" he asked with a playful grin. She giggled. "You'll ruin it." But he insisted. Within minutes, flour dusted his face and the dough was a hopeless disaster. They both laughed until their sides hurt. It was the first time the vast, empty mansion truly felt like a home. Still, not everyone was happy for them. Some of the household staff whispered that Lily had only married him for his money. The comments hurt her deeply, though she tried her best to pretend she didn't care. That night she sat alone in the garden, her eyes fixed on the distant stars. Oliver joined her quietly. "Rough day?" he asked. She nodded, her voice small. "Your friends think I'm using you." He looked at her seriously. "Then you should ignore them." She sighed, turning to face him. "You belong to their world, Oliver. I don't." He replied softly, his voice full of a conviction that surprised them both. "Then maybe I don't want to belong there either." A few days later, Oliver invited her to a high-profile charity event. Lily refused at first. "I'll never fit in there," she said, her insecurity showing. But Oliver gently took her hand. "Just let them see the real you." When they arrived, the entire room turned to stare. Her simple, elegant dress stood out among the sea of expensive designer gowns. People whispered behind their hands and shared quiet, mocking laughs. One woman sneered loudly. "So, this is your new little project, Oliver?" He looked at her with ice in his eyes. "This is my wife. Show some respect." The room went silent. Lily's eyes filled with tears, not of shame, but of pride. On the way home, she whispered, "Thank you." He smiled faintly. "You don't need me to fight your battles. You're stronger than any of them will ever be." After that night, their days became peaceful. They walked together in the garden, shared tea in the evenings, and talked late into the night. It seemed, for the first time, that real love was finally blossoming between them. But fate wasn't done testing them. One afternoon, while tidying Oliver's study, Lily's eyes fell on his phone as it lit up. A message from Ethan flashed on the screen. It read, "Can't believe you're still playing the bet." "You're winning big, mate!" The words froze her. Her heart began to pound in her chest, and the world around her blurred. When Oliver returned home, he found her standing by the window, holding the phone in her hand like a piece of broken glass. "What's wrong?" he asked gently, approaching her. Lily turned, her eyes swimming with tears. "Is it true? Was this entire marriage just a bet?" Oliver froze. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. "Tell me the truth," she whispered, her voice trembling. He finally spoke, his voice barely audible. "At first, yes, but not anymore." The confession hit her like a physical blow. "So it was true," she said, her voice shaking with betrayal. "It started as a dare," he admitted, his face etched with regret. "But Lily, I swear to you, I fell in love with you." She just shook her head, disbelief and pain warring in her eyes. "You can't play with someone's heart, Oliver. You don't make bets on love." She picked up her small bag and walked toward the door. He ran after her, his voice cracking as he pleaded, "Please, don't go. I'll fix this. I'll prove it to you." But she turned around only once, her eyes full of a sorrow that pierced him to the core. "You already lost me," she whispered. Outside, a sudden rain began to pour as she walked away from the mansion and out of his life. Oliver stood by the gate, soaked and broken, watching her disappear into the night. Mrs. Parker stood at the doorway, her face full of sadness. "She'll come back," she whispered, trying to offer some comfort. Oliver replied quietly, his voice hollow. "Not unless I fix what I broke." That night he sat alone in the dark, staring at their wedding photo. Her smile in the picture looked like a distant, impossible dream. He methodically deleted every message, every social media account, every last trace of the fake world he had built. Then he called Ethan one last time. "The bet is over," he said coldly. "Don't ever speak to me again." When he hung up, the silence in the room was crushing. He placed the photo on his desk and whispered to the empty house. "I'll find you, Lily. Not for a bet, but for love." The rain tapped against the window, a lonely sound in the night. And for the first time, Oliver realized this wasn't about his pride anymore. It was about earning back the only heart he had ever truly wanted. Rain poured endlessly that night as Lily walked down a quiet London street, her heart completely shattered. Each cold drop hit her face, mixing with her tears. She had no idea where she was going, but she knew she couldn't go back. The man she had started to trust, the one she thought she knew, had broken her completely. She found a small, unassuming guest house near the cafe where she once worked and checked in, feeling numb and silent. Meanwhile, back in the grand mansion, Oliver sat alone, staring at the empty chair across the dining table. The sprawling house felt cold and lifeless without her laughter echoing through the halls. For the very first time in his life, the silence was deafening, more painful than anything he had ever known. He remembered her smile, the way she had laughed when he accidentally got flour on his face while they were baking. He remembered the way her eyes softened when she thanked him for the smallest kindness. Every little memory of her lingered in his mind, a constant, painful reminder of what he had lost. He tried calling her, but her phone was switched off. Desperate, he drove to the cafe, but she wasn't there. The next morning, Lily quietly returned to her old job. Her friends were surprised but happy to see her again. "Lily, you're back," exclaimed Emma, another waitress. Lily forced a small, weak smile. "Yes, just needed the work." Emma noticed the deep exhaustion in her friend's eyes but decided not to press for details. Throughout the day, Lily worked like a machine. No laughter, no warmth, just a quiet, mechanical efficiency. Across town, Oliver was losing sleep. He spent his days searching for her, a frantic energy possessing him. He even went to her mother's house, but Lily wasn't there either. Her mother was kind but firm. "She doesn't want to see you, Mr. Reed," she said, her voice gentle but unyielding. "Please, just let her heal." Those words cut him deeper than any physical blow. He realized with a sickening lurch that all his money, all his influence couldn't buy forgiveness. It couldn't mend a broken heart. Days bled into weeks. Lily worked double shifts, burying herself in exhaustion to keep her thoughts at bay. One evening, as she was leaving the cafe, she saw him. Oliver was waiting outside, looking tired and unshaven, a shadow of the proud, polished man she once knew. She tried to walk past, to ignore the ache in her chest, but he stepped forward gently. "Please, Lily, just 1 minute." She froze, her feet rooted to the pavement, but she didn't walk away. "I deserve your anger," he said softly, his voice raw. "But I need you to know the truth. That bet, it started as a stupid joke, yes, but every moment I spent with you changed me. You made me want to be someone better, someone worthy. I can't undo the past, but I promise I'll spend the rest of my life proving that what I feel for you now is real." Lily's eyes filled with fresh tears, but she remained quiet. "You hurt me," she whispered, the words barely audible over the city's hum. "You turned my life, my feelings, into a game." Oliver nodded, not even trying to defend himself. "I know. and I hate myself for it every single day." She looked away towards the blurry streetlights. "Then leave me alone." He didn't argue. He didn't push. He simply said, "I'll wait for you, no matter how long it takes." And then he turned and walked away into the night. That night, Lily cried again, but this time it was different. She didn't understand why his words still managed to touch a part of her she thought was dead. She wanted to hate him, to forget him completely, but every memory came rushing back. The way he fiercely defended her at that awful party, how he learned to eat simple food just for her, the way he looked at her like she was the only person in the world. The pain of missing him was starting to grow stronger than her anger. Meanwhile, Oliver began a new routine. He started visiting the same cafe every morning, sitting quietly at a corner table. He never disturbed her, never tried to speak to her. He just watched her work from afar, drinking the same kind of tea she used to make for him. The other staff and regulars began to whisper, wondering why the incredibly rich and famous Mr. Reed came to such a small, ordinary place every single day. But he didn't care about their stares or their gossip. It was his way of being near her, a quiet penance, even if she never once looked his way. One day, a customer got unnecessarily loud, arguing harshly with Lily over a simple wrong order. Oliver immediately stood up, his protective instincts kicking in, ready to intervene. But before he could take a step, Lily handled it with a calm and quiet strength. "It's all right, sir. My apologies," she said softly, her composure unshaken. The man, embarrassed by her grace, quickly apologized and backed down. Oliver sat back down, a quiet, proud smile on his face. She didn't need him to save her anymore. She had grown stronger on her own. Later that night, as she was locking up, she found a small folded note under a cup on his usual table. It read, "I'm proud of you. I'll keep proving that I'm not the man I was." She stared at his familiar handwriting for a long time, her heart aching with a confusing mix of emotions. Weeks passed, and little by little, Lily started to see the change in him. He didn't send extravagant flowers or expensive gifts. Instead, he helped quietly, from the shadows. When the cafe's old roof started leaking during a heavy storm, an anonymous donor paid for all the repairs. When a local shelter she volunteered at needed funds, a large donation suddenly arrived in her name. She knew it was him, but she said nothing. Her mother called one evening. "That man. He came again," she said softly over the phone. "He fixed the broken fence and brought some medicine for my arthritis. He didn't even try to step inside. I think he truly regrets it, Lily." Tears filled Lily's eyes as she listened. Maybe, just maybe, he meant every word he said. A month later, she saw him again at the cafe. He looked calmer, humbler. He smiled politely, a small, hopeful gesture. "One tea, please." She served him without a word. He took a sip and said, "Still the best tea in London." She didn't answer, but she couldn't stop the corner of her mouth from turning up in a small, fleeting smile. The next morning, she found another note on the same table. "Some mistakes can't be erased, but I hope one day you'll let me try again." She folded the paper carefully and slipped it into her apron pocket, keeping it close. That night, Lily sat by her window, thinking about everything that had happened. She realized that love wasn't about fairy tale perfection. It was about effort, forgiveness, and the difficult, messy process of change. Oliver had hurt her deeply, yes, but he was trying to fix what he had broken, not with grand gestures but with quiet, consistent action. Deep inside, she knew she still loved him. The real question was whether she could ever bring herself to trust him again. Across town, Oliver sat by his own window, holding the single wedding photo they had together. He whispered softly to the empty room, "I'll wait as long as it takes, Lily. Even if you never come back, I'll love you anyway." The city lights shimmered outside, two lonely hearts beating apart, yet still connected by an invisible thread of hope. And as the rain began to fall once more over London, both of them looked up at the same dark sky, not knowing that their story was far from over, because love, when it's real, always finds its way back. Months passed quietly after that stormy night. Lily's life slowly found its rhythm again. She worked long hours at the cafe, putting on a brave smile for customers and helping her mother on the weekends. On the outside, she looked fine, but deep inside, a part of her heart still carried Oliver's name. Every morning, she'd see that same empty corner table where he used to sit. Sometimes she'd catch herself glancing toward the door, a flicker of hope, wondering if he might walk in again. Most days, he didn't. Yet, somehow, she even missed his silence. Oliver, on the other hand, had changed completely. He stopped attending those lavish, empty parties and cut ties with the friends who once cheered for that cruel bet. Instead, he poured his time into helping others. He started donating quietly to charities, visiting orphanages, and even began funding scholarships for the children of cafe workers. He wasn't doing it to impress Lily anymore. He was doing it because she had shown him what real kindness looked like. One Sunday morning, fate brought them back together. Lily was serving tea to a group of volunteers at a local shelter when she heard a familiar voice behind her. "Need an extra pair of hands?" She turned around slowly. It was Oliver. He looked different, calmer, more human. The proud, arrogant businessman was gone. Standing before her was a man who had learned humility. For a long, silent moment, they just stared at each other. Then Lily simply said, "You can help with the boxes." A gentle smile touched Oliver's lips as he joined her. They worked side by side in a comfortable silence, handing out food, folding blankets, and cleaning tables. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the shelter, Lily finally looked at him and asked softly, "Why are you here, Oliver?" He answered without a hint of hesitation, "Because I promised myself I'd become the kind of man you could forgive." His voice was steady, but his eyes held a deep, lingering pain. Lily didn't reply, but in that moment, something inside her heart shifted. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was understanding. That night, when she got home, she found a folded piece of paper tucked inside her bag. It wasn't fancy stationery, just a simple note. It read, "You changed me, Lily. You showed me what love really means, giving, not taking. I don't expect another chance, but I'll keep loving you, even from afar." She read those lines again and again, soft tears falling onto the page. For the first time in months, she didn't feel anger. She felt peace. The following weeks were filled with unexpected moments. Oliver continued to volunteer at the shelter. Sometimes he and Lily would work together. They started talking about small things, the weather, the cafe, her mother. It wasn't like before. It was gentle, and it was real. One afternoon, as they were packing donated clothes, a little boy ran up to Lily and hugged her leg tightly. "Thank you, Miss Lily," he said with a cheerful grin. Oliver watched the scene, a genuine smile on his face. Later, he whispered to her, "See that? That's what makes you special. You give people hope." Lily blushed faintly and looked away. "And you? You seem different too." Oliver nodded slowly. "I had to lose everything to understand what really matters." The next weekend, the rain returned, a soft, steady, and familiar downpour. The cafe was quiet that evening. Just before closing, Lily heard the bell on the door chime. Oliver stood there, soaked from the rain but smiling gently. "Just one cup of tea?" he asked, his voice soft. She sighed but nodded, leading him to a table. They sat across from each other, the silence stretching between them at first. Then he said, "I never expected forgiveness. I only hoped you'd be happy." She looked at him for a long time. "You hurt me deeply, Oliver. But I can't deny what you've become. You're not the same man who made that bet." He smiled faintly. "That's because of you." For the first time in months, they talked freely, about life, dreams, mistakes, and the possibility of second chances. The hours melted away. When Lily finally glanced out the window, a small smile played on her lips. "It's raining again." Oliver laughed softly. "Seems like the rain keeps bringing us together." After he left, Lily stood by the window, watching his figure disappear into the night. Her heart whispered something she wasn't quite ready to admit. She still loved him. Days later, an accident shook everything. On his way to deliver supplies to the shelter, Oliver's car skidded on a wet road and crashed into a barrier. He was rushed to the hospital. The news spread quickly, and when Lily heard, she froze. Without a second thought, she dropped everything and ran. When she reached the hospital, she saw him lying there, pale and unconscious. In that moment, all her anger, pride, and fear evaporated. She sat by his side, her hand gripping his tightly. "You fool," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "You said you'd prove your love, not leave me like this." Hours passed before he finally opened his eyes. The first thing he saw was her face. "Lily," he whispered weakly. She managed to smile through her tears. "You scared me." He tried to speak, but she hushed him gently. "Don't talk. Just rest." The doctor entered with a reassuring smile. "He'll recover soon. You can take him home in a few days." Relief washed over her. She looked down at him and whispered, "You're impossible to hate. You know that?" He smiled faintly. "Then maybe there's still hope." After his recovery, Lily visited him often. They spent quiet evenings talking and laughing softly, just like they used to. It felt natural, easy, and real. One evening, as the sun set over the city, Oliver said softly, "Lily, I don't expect you to say yes, but I want to ask one thing. Will you give us a real beginning? Not from a bet, but from the heart?" Lily looked into his eyes, searching for any trace of the old Oliver. She saw no pride, no lies, only pure, honest love. She smiled gently and said, "Maybe it's time we both start over." Oliver's heart felt lighter than it ever had before. He took her hand carefully, almost afraid this perfect moment might disappear if he moved too fast. But she didn't pull away. For the first time, their hearts were truly at peace. That night, they walked together under a soft rain, side by side. The city lights reflected on the wet streets, just like the first night they met. But this time, there was no bet, no game, only a love that had been born from pain, forgiveness, and change. As they reached the corner of the street, Lily looked up at him and whispered, "Let's promise something, Oliver." He smiled. "Anything," she said softly. "No more bets, no more lies, just love." He nodded, holding her hand tighter. "Just love." And as the rain fell gently around them, they both knew this wasn't the end, but the true beginning of their story. Months had passed since that rainy night when Lily and Oliver promised to begin again. Life, once a chaotic storm, was slowly returning to color. Not the bright, flashy shades Oliver was used to, but soft, steady, and real. The world they were building was quiet, but it was theirs. Lily went back to her part-time job at the cafe, the familiar scent of coffee and pastries a comforting anchor. Oliver, on the other hand, stepped into a world completely foreign to him. He started helping run a charity project for families in need, a humbling experience that chipped away at his old, arrogant self, piece by piece. Their two worlds, once separated by a chasm of wealth and pride, began to blend together naturally, like watercolors on a page. Every morning, without fail, Oliver would stop by the cafe for his usual tea. He no longer arrived in a flashy car or with a condescending smirk. He came because the cafe, and the woman in it, felt like home. Lily would always greet him with a faint, knowing smile, pretending to be busy organizing cups or wiping down the counter, though her heart still did a little flutter every time the bell above the door chimed to announce his arrival. They didn't rush. They didn't force conversations or grand gestures. They simply let time do its quiet, patient work, mending the cracks in their story. One crisp autumn afternoon, as the last of the lunch crowd thinned out, Oliver waited for Lily outside after her shift. The air was cool, carrying the scent of rain and fallen leaves. "Walk with me?" he asked softly, his voice gentle, stripped of its old command. Lily nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. They walked through the nearby park, the trees a blaze of gold and amber under the afternoon sun. For a long time, they didn't speak. They didn't need to. The comfortable silence between them said more than words ever could. It spoke of forgiveness, understanding, and the slow, steady rebuilding of trust. Finally, Oliver stopped near a small, shimmering lake. He turned to her, his gaze direct and sincere. "You know," he began, his voice barely above a whisper, "I used to think love was so easy. Just a word, something you could buy or win, like a trophy." He looked at her, his eyes filled with a new kind of wisdom. "Then you came along and showed me what it's really about. It's about patience, forgiveness, and truth." Lily offered a small, knowing smile. "You learned the hard way." He let out a soft laugh, a sound of genuine amusement and relief. "And it was worth every single lesson." As the weeks melted into months, their bond grew stronger, its roots deepening with each passing day. Oliver began spending his weekends helping at the cafe. He surprised everyone, especially Lily's regulars who had once judged their relationship so harshly. They watched, astonished, as the billionaire swept floors, cleared tables, and served customers with a genuine smile. People who once saw Lily as a pawn in a rich man's game began to see the truth. They saw the way he looked at her, not with pity, but with a profound admiration. He wasn't a wealthy man indulging a fantasy. He was simply a man who had found everything he ever needed in a small cafe with a woman who taught him how to love. One evening, they took a significant step. They visited Lily's mother together. This time, there was no tension, no suspicion. The older woman welcomed Oliver with a warm, genuine embrace. Over dinner, she looked at him, her expression serious but kind. "You hurt my daughter once," she said, her voice steady, "but you also healed her heart. Take care of her, Oliver." He met her gaze without flinching, his sincerity undeniable. "I will, ma'am. Always." Later, as Lily walked him to the gate under the soft glow of the porch light, she teased him gently. "You're finally part of the family." He chuckled, the sound warm in the cool night air. "Took me long enough." She smiled, her eyes shining in the moonlight. "You've changed, Oliver. Completely." He reached out, his hand gently cupping her cheek. "You changed me, Lily." Winter arrived early that year, blanketing London in a quiet, pristine layer of white. The city's hustle seemed to soften under the snow. Inside the cafe, it was a haven of warmth. Twinkling lights were strung along the windows, and the air was thick with the comforting scent of cinnamon and spice. On Christmas Eve, Lily decided to open the cafe for a special charity event, offering free, hot meals to anyone in need. Oliver was by her side the entire day, a true partner in every sense. He served food, refilled drinks, and cleaned tables, his movements filled with a purpose he'd never known in his old life. This felt right. This felt like love in its purest, most selfless form. As the evening wound down and the last guest departed, the cafe grew quiet. Only a few candles remained lit, their flames dancing softly in the dim light. Oliver walked towards Lily, his expression a mixture of nervousness and profound love. In his hand, he held a small black velvet box. "Lily," he said, his voice soft but clear, "I once made the biggest mistake of my life by turning love into a bet. I don't ever want to make love feel like a game again." He opened the box. Inside, nestled on the velvet, was a simple, elegant silver ring. "So, this time," he continued, his eyes locked on hers, "no dares, no jokes, no pride, just love. Will you marry me again, for real?" Lily stared at him, her eyes wide as tears of joy began to well up, shimmering like tiny stars under the soft candlelight. For a moment, she was speechless, the world seeming to hold its breath. Then, a radiant smile broke across her face, and she whispered the one word he was desperate to hear. "Yes, Oliver. This time, for love." Just then, the quiet cafe erupted in applause. Mrs. Parker and the rest of the staff, who had been watching from the kitchen doorway, cheered for the couple. It was a small, intimate moment, but it felt as grand and significant as any event in the world. A week later, they held a quiet ceremony in the same small church where Dee once said, "I do," under the glare of cameras and the weight of a foolish dare. But this time, everything was different. There were no crowds, no flashing lights, no hollow promises. There was only truth, only love. Lily wore a simple, elegant white dress, and Oliver couldn't take his eyes off her. When they exchanged their vows, his voice was thick with emotion. "I promise to love you," he said, "not because I won a dare, but because you are my reason to be better every single day." Lily smiled through her happy tears. "And I promise to never stop believing in the man you became." When they kissed, the church bells rang softly in the distance, a gentle, hopeful sound marking their true beginning. After the ceremony, they didn't go to a lavish reception. They returned to the cafe, their cafe. Together, they hung a new sign above the door. It read, "Forever Love." It became more than just a place for coffee. It was a small corner of the world filled with hope, a testament to the power of second chances. Years passed. The cafe thrived, and so did their love. On quiet mornings, Lily still made Oliver his tea, and he still looked at her with the same awe, respect, and endless love he'd felt that first morning when everything truly began. One rainy evening, as they sat by the window watching the droplets trace paths down the glass, Lily rested her head on his shoulder. "Do you ever think about that bet?" she asked softly. Oliver chuckled, a low, warm sound. "Every day," he admitted, "because that one foolish mistake led me to you." She smiled, her heart full. Then maybe it wasn't a mistake after all. Outside, the rain fell gently on the streets of London. The very same rain that had once separated them now felt like a cleansing, washing the world clean for their new start. Inside, two hearts sat together, warm and content, secure in the knowledge that after all the pride, pain, and patience, love had finally won. And so, the man who once married a waitress on a bet discovered the greatest truth of his life, that real love isn't born from a challenge but from forgiveness, and from two hearts brave enough to begin again. Thank you for watching our story unfold. If you enjoyed this journey of love and second chances, please give this video a like and subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales. We'll see you in the next one.